The bloody arrival. The grand hall of the Galactic Confederation sparkled with the light of 1,000 stars, reflected off crystalline architecture that had stood for millennia. Representatives from over 300 species mingled beneath the vast dome, their varied forms a testament to the diverse paths evolution had taken across the cosmos. They wore their civility like expensive jewelry, prominently displayed and carefully maintained. Ambassador Thextil of the Voraxian cluster adjusted his ceremonial robes and sneered at the newly arrived human delegation. "So these are the primitives who finally managed to drag themselves to our table," he whispered to Ambassador Klee, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate environmental suit, nearly 60 years after their invitation was extended. "Quite rude," Klee's translation device chirped. "The Confederation does not appreciate tardiness. Perhaps they lack the intelligence to understand the importance of punctuality." The human delegation approached, led by a woman with dark eyes that seemed to contain the varied void of space. Captain Mira Chen wore a formal military uniform adorned with insignias unfamiliar to the Confederation species. Behind her followed 5 other humans, their postures rigid, faces bearing scars both visible and invisible. Most striking was the ship they had arrived in, visible through the transparent dome above. Unlike the sleek, pristine vessels of the Confederation, the human ship was a patchwork of metals, its hull scarred with burn marks and what appeared to be blood. Massive red streaks painted across its bow, forming patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. Captain Mira Chen of Earth announced the Confederation herald, his many limbs gesturing dramatically, arriving to present Earth's formal acceptance of Confederation membership. A ripple of condescending laughter spread through the gathered ambassadors. "Only 60 years late," someone muttered, loudly enough to be heard. Captain Chen's expression never changed as she stepped to the center of the hall. "The United Earth Government apologizes for our delayed response to your invitation," she began, her voice carrying a strength that silenced the murmurs. "We were otherwise engaged. For 60 years. Ambassador Thextil couldn't contain himself. What could possibly have occupied an emerging species for so long that they couldn't respond to the greatest honor in the galaxy? Captain Chen's eyes locked onto the Voraxian, and something in her gaze made him step back involuntarily. "War," she said simply. The word hung in the air, primitive and crude to the ears of a civilization that had known peace for 10,000 years. "War," repeated Grand Minister Zaxis, the eldest and most respected member of the Confederation Council. "With whom? Our scans detected no other spacefaring civilizations in your region." A cold smile formed on Chen's lips. They weren't spacefaring when they arrived. The council chamber darkened as Captain Chen activated a holographic projector. The image formed above them, a massive ship, unlike any design the Confederation had encountered. It was organic, almost insectoid, with segments that appeared to breathe. 59 years ago, 3 months after we received your invitation, they came. Chen narrated as the hologram showed the alien vessel approaching Earth. "We called them the Swarm. They never communicated, never negotiated. They simply began to feed." The hologram shifted to show cities under attack, strange creatures pouring from landing craft. The humans in the images fought back with primitive projectile weapons at first, then increasingly sophisticated technology as the years progressed. "We were not a unified planet when they came," Chen continued. "We had nations, borders, old hatreds, but the Swarm didn't care about our divisions. They consumed everything in their path without discrimination." Minister Zaxis leaned forward, his ancient eyes wide with shock. How many casualties?" 1.4 billion in the first year, Chen answered, her voice flat. "We lost India and most of Southeast Asia before we even understood what we were fighting." A gasp rippled through the hall. The Confederation had not seen death on such a scale in recorded history. "But you survived," whispered Ambassador Klee, the gases within his suit swirling in agitation. Chen nodded. "We did more than survive. We won." The hologram shifted again, showing the evolution of human warfare. primitive tanks and aircraft giving way to powered armor, orbital weapons platforms, and finally spacecraft built specifically for war. Massive, brutal vessels designed not for exploration but for destruction. We unified out of necessity, Chen explained. The old nations pooled resources, shared technology. What might have taken us centuries to develop, we achieved in decades. Necessity is a powerful motivator. The hologram showed the final battle. Hundreds of human warships, many bearing the same red streaks as Chen's vessel, engaging a massive swarm mothership near the orbit of Jupiter. This was 3 years ago, Chen said. The last of them. We hunted the stragglers down one by one after that. As the hologram faded, the Grand Hall remained silent. The Confederation representatives stared at the human delegation with new eyes, not seeing primitives now, but survivors of an ordeal none of them could imagine. The red markings on your ships. Minister Zaxis began hesitantly. Blood, Chen confirmed, a tradition that started early in the war. Each streak represents a successful defense of a human settlement. The ship that brought us here defended Rio de Janeiro during the third wave. Over 6 million people survived because of her actions. Ambassador Thextil's earlier smugness had evaporated entirely. Why didn't you call for help? The Confederation would have. Would have what? Chen interrupted, her calm facade cracking for the first time. Your civilization has known peace for so long you've forgotten how to fight. Your ships are beautiful, but they're not warships. Your people are wise, but they're not warriors. By the time your diplomatic mission would have arrived, Earth would have been nothing but a feeding ground. She reached into her uniform and pulled out an old, worn envelope, the original invitation from the Confederation, now yellowed with age and stained with what could only be blood. We kept this as a reminder, she said, placing it on the central table, a reminder that the universe is larger than we knew and not always kind. We promised ourselves that if we survived, we would come here and take our place among you. Minister Zaxis rose slowly from his seat, his ancient frame trembling slightly as he approached Captain Chen. The hall watched in stunned silence as he performed the sacred gesture of the Confederation, a deep bow with palms displayed. Captain Chen of Earth, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I express our profound regret that you faced such darkness alone. And I express our profound admiration for the strength you showed in overcoming it. Chen returned the gesture, though her bow was military precise rather than ceremonial. We come not to seek pity, she said clearly, but to take our place as equals. Earth has learned harsh lessons about survival. We hope the Confederation never needs such knowledge. But if darkness comes again, humanity stands ready. As the formal induction ceremony began, Ambassador Thextil found himself staring at the human ship through the dome above. The red streaks that had seemed so primitive, so barbaric just hours before, now told a different story. Each mark represented millions of lives saved, a battle won against impossible odds. The humans hadn't been late to the gathering of civilized species. They had been fighting for the right to attend at all. And as the ceremony concluded, and the delegates began to mingle once more, a new respect filled the Grand Hall. The humans moved among them, scared but unbroken, their eyes holding knowledge the Confederation had been privileged enough to forget, that peace was precious because it could be lost, and that sometimes survival demanded blood. The Confederation had invited Earth, expecting to guide a younger species toward enlightenment. Instead, they found themselves face to face with warriors who had seen the darkness beyond the stars and defeated it. Before the night was over, many delegates found themselves asking the same question. If the darkness came for the Confederation, would they show the same courage as these blood-marked humans? The blood earned respect. 6 months after Earth's dramatic introduction to the Galactic Confederation, the mood had shifted from initial shock to cautious curiosity. Humans had begun integrating into Confederation society, trading technology, sharing cultural insights, and establishing diplomatic ties. Yet an undercurrent of unease remained. The humans were different. Their ships still bore those unsettling red streaks. Their eyes still carried shadows of their long war. Captain Mira Chen had been appointed Earth's military liaison to the Confederation, a position created specifically for her. She stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the Confederation's crown jewel, a massive installation orbiting a neutron star at the galaxy's center. "Still making them nervous, I see," said a voice behind her. Chen turned to find Ambassador Thex Till approaching, his earlier disdain replaced by something resembling respect. "Old habits die hard," Chen replied, nodding toward a group of Lenturi diplomats who had given her a wide berth. "They see our scars and remember we're predators. Can you blame them? Your presentation at the induction ceremony gave many delegates nightmares." Chen smiled thinly. "Good. Nightmares keep you alert." Before Thex Till could respond, an alarm blared across the station, a sound so rarely heard that many younger diplomats looked around in confusion. "Warning," announced the station's eye. "Unknown vessels approaching. Configuration matches no known Confederation design." Chen was already moving, Thex Till hurrying to keep pace with her as she headed for the command center. When they arrived, the vast chamber was in chaos. Species that had known only peace for millennia now faced with a potential threat. On the main view screen, 5 massive ships approached Harmony Station. Their design was instantly recognizable to Chen. The same organic, segmented appearance as the swarm vessels that had devastated Earth. "It can't be," she whispered, then louder. "Get me a direct link to Earth Command. Now." "What are they?" demanded Grand Minister Zaxis, who had aged visibly in the seconds since the alarm began. "The swarm," Chen replied, her voice cold with controlled fury. "Or something very much like them. We thought we'd hunted down the last of them." The Confederation's defense fleet, a collection of primarily ceremonial vessels, began to mobilize, their formations elegant but impractical. Chen watched with growing dread as the unknown ships accelerated toward the station. "Our defense fleet has never seen actual combat," Thex Till admitted quietly. "They're trained for shows of force, not war." A communication officer approached. "Captain Chen, we have Earth Command." The view screen shifted to show Admiral Catherine Harrison, her weathered face grim. "We're seeing it, Chen," Harrison said without preamble. "Swarm configuration but larger vessels. Analysis suggests these aren't stragglers. This is the main hive." "Recommendations?" Chen asked, aware that every Confederation official was listening. "The nearest Earth battle group is 40 hours out at maximum burn," Harrison replied. "You'll have to work with what you've got there." Chen nodded. "Permission to assume temporary command of Confederation defense assets." Harrison's eyes flicked to the Confederation officials visible in her feed. "That's their call. But make it quick." The feed cut out, and Chen turned to face Grand Minister Zaxis. The ancient diplomat looked lost, overwhelmed by a situation his millennia of experience had never prepared him for. "Minister," Chen said firmly, "I need emergency authority over your defense fleet. My people have fought these things before. Yours haven't." "This is unprecedented," began another council member, but Zaxis raised a hand to silence him. "Give her what she needs," the old minister ordered. "Now." Within minutes, Chen had established a makeshift war room. She interfaced with the commanders of the Confederation vessels, issuing orders that confused and sometimes alarmed them. "Break your formation," she instructed the elegant Lenturi cruisers. "They target concentrations of ships. Scatter and maintain irregular movement patterns." "But our defense protocols," began the Lenturi commander. "We'll get you killed," Chen interrupted. "These aren't diplomats you're facing. They're predators. Move like prey, and they'll treat you as such." As the swarm vessels closed in, Chen ordered the station's civilian population to shelter in the core sections. Thex Till remained by her side, translating her more technical instructions into terms the various species could understand. "Why are they here?" Thex Till asked quietly as they watched the approaching enemy. If they're the same creatures that attacked Earth, they're hunters, Chen replied grimly. They follow the scent of viable feeding grounds. When we defeated their advance force, we sent a message back to wherever they came from. This prey fights back. Now they've come to see for themselves. The first attack came suddenly, not against Harmony Station as expected, but against the scattered Confederation defense fleet. One of the swarm vessels split open, releasing thousands of smaller craft that swarmed toward the unprepared ships. All vessels, defensive protocols Alpha 7. Chen barked into the communication system. Fire at will on the smaller craft. The Confederation vessels, beautiful but ill-equipped for war, began to fire energy weapons that seemed to do little damage to the swarm fighters. One by one, the ceremonial ships began to fall. We need reinforcements, Thextil said, watching as a Drathi cruiser exploded silently in the void. Chen's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. We need time, and we need them to focus on a different target. She opened a channel to her own ship, which had been docked at Harmony Station since their arrival. Lieutenant Park, power up the Defiant. We're going hunting. Captain, you can't seriously intend to engage those vessels with a single ship, protested a Confederation admiral. Chen turned to him, her expression stone. The Defiant has more combat experience than your entire fleet combined. And more importantly, it has something those creatures recognize. The blood markings, Thextil realized suddenly. They've seen them before. Chen nodded sharply. On the ships that killed their advance force. If there's one thing predators respect, it's another predator. Minutes later, the Defiant undocked from Harmony Station. Unlike the sleek, pristine Confederation vessels, the human ship was a brutal thing of function over form. Its hull scarred and patched, its weapons systems prominently displayed. And most notably, those red streaks across its bow, markings that had once seemed primitive to Confederation eyes, but now carried a new significance. The Defiant accelerated directly toward the largest swarm vessel, weapons hot. In the command center, Thextil and the others watched in disbelief as the single human ship engaged an enemy that outmassed it hundreds of times over. But Chen had been right. The moment the Defiant appeared, the swarm's attention shifted. The smaller fighters regrouped, abandoning the Confederation fleet to converge on this new, familiar threat. "What is she doing?" whispered Minister Zaxis as the Defiant danced between enemy fire, its own weapons lashing out with precision. "Creating a distraction," Thextil replied, understanding dawning, "and giving us a chance to regroup." He turned to the Confederation commanders. "Look at how she moves her ship. Study it. That's how we need to fight them." On the view screen, the Defiant executed a series of maneuvers no Confederation pilot would have attempted, diving directly into the swarm of fighters, weapons firing in controlled bursts that seemed to target specific points on the enemy craft. Chen's voice came through the comms. "Their central nervous system is located in what looks like an antenna array. Target those structures and maintain irregular movement. They predict patterns." Slowly, the remaining Confederation ships began to adapt, mimicking the Defiant's tactics. Ships that had been designed for ceremony and show transformed into something new under the pressure of survival. "They're learning." Chen's voice came through again, strained but determined. "Keep it up. We just need to hold until." Her transmission cut off as the Defiant took a direct hit, its starboard section visibly damaged. For 3 agonizing hours, the battle continued. The Defiant, despite increasing damage, continued to lead the defense, drawing the bulk of the swarm's attention, while the Confederation fleet regrouped and adapted. And then, just as it seemed the human ship could take no more, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. "Earth vessels," announced the sensor officer. 27 warships approaching at maximum velocity. On the view screen, the Earth battle group arrived, each ship bearing the same red markings as the Defiant, though in different patterns and quantities. Unlike the Confederation's ceremonial fleet, these were vessels built for one purpose only: war. The Earth ships moved with coordinated precision, forming attack patterns that seemed chaotic but were clearly rehearsed. They targeted the larger swarm vessels methodically, focusing fire on vulnerable points that Chen had identified during the initial engagement. From his position in the command center, Vex Till could hear the Earth commanders communicating in terse, coded language, a stark contrast to the formal protocols of Confederation fleet operations. Red 7 on the Port High ship. Copy that. Blue team engaging central mass. All vessels, target nerve clusters and propulsion. Blood and iron protocol. Within an hour, the tide had turned. The swarm vessels, overwhelming against an unprepared opponent, found themselves outmatched by an enemy that had studied them, adapted to them, and developed specific tactics to counter their advantages. As the last swarm ship exploded in a silent bloom of fire, shears erupted across Harmony Station. The Confederation had faced its first real threat in 10 millennia, and survived. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and casualties were counted, Captain Chen returned to the station. Her uniform was torn, a fresh cut across her forehead adding another scar to her collection. Minister Zaxis met her at the docking bay, his ancient eyes wet with unchecked tears. "You saved us," he said simply. Chen shook her head. "We fought together. Your people learned quickly. Because we had a teacher." The old minister looked past her to where the Earth fleet maintained a protective formation around the station. "Those markings on your ships, I understand them now. They're not just records of victory. They're promises." "Promises?" Chen asked. "That you will stand between death and those who cannot fight," Zaxis replied. "That the blood on your ships represents not just what you've lost, but what you've saved." Chen was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "That's more poetic than how we see it. But yes, close enough." In the days that followed, the Confederation Council convened an emergency session. The millennia of peace had made them complacent, unprepared for the realities of a galaxy that still held threats. Changes would be necessary. Captain Chen stood before them once more, but this time there were no condescending smiles, no whispers about primitive humans. Only respect. "The Earth delegation proposes a joint defense initiative," she announced. "Our experience, combined with your resources, will train your people, help you adapt your ships. In return, we ask for full integration into Confederation society, not as latecomers or curiosities, but as equals." The vote was unanimous. 1 year later, the first joint human Confederation defense vessel launched from the newly established Earth shipyards. Its design combined the elegance of Confederation architecture with the functional brutality of human warships. And across its bow, visible to all who might approach Confederation space with ill intent, was a single red streak, not of actual blood, but a symbol now understood across the galaxy. A warning to predators that this prey had teeth. Ambassador Thextil stood beside Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen, as they watched the ship depart on its maiden voyage. "You know," Thextil said thoughtfully, "when you first arrived, many thought those blood markings were barbaric, a sign that humans weren't ready for civilization." Chen smiled slightly. "And now? Now we understand. Sometimes civilization must be defended with blood. And those who are willing to shed their own to protect others deserve not our scorn, but our deepest respect." The new ship activated its drive, accelerating into the darkness between stars, its red marking a promise and a warning to whatever waited beyond the known. The Confederation had laughed at Earth's late arrival. Now, they thanked the stars that humans had arrived at all, bloody ships and all. The Blood Covenant. 5 years after the swarm attack on Harmony Station, the Galactic Confederation had transformed. What was once a peaceful, borderline ceremonial alliance had evolved into something more robust, a true union of species with Earth's military expertise at its core. The grand reception hall of New Terra Station hummed with conversation as delegations from across the galaxy gathered to commemorate the 5th anniversary of what historians now call the Battle of Harmony. The station itself was a testament to the new partnership, designed by Confederation architects, but built with Earth's defensive philosophies woven into every bulkhead and corridor. Admiral Mira Chen, now bearing additional scars and honors, surveyed the gathering with cautious satisfaction. The integration had not been painless. Humans were still viewed with a mixture of awe and unease by some species, but the results were undeniable. The Confederation had teeth now. "Admiring your handiwork," Grand Minister Zaxis asked, approaching with the aid of a hovering mobility chair. The ancient diplomat had aged considerably since the attack, but his eyes remained sharp. "Our handiwork," Chen corrected. "This wouldn't have happened without your support." Zaxis chuckled softly. "My support? I merely stepped aside and let the inevitable occur. History will remember you as the catalyst, Admiral." Before Chen could respond, Ambassador Thextil approached, accompanied by a tall, slender being Chen didn't recognize. The newcomer's skin shifted colors like oil on water, and her eyes, all 6 of them, moved independently, scanning the room continuously. "Admiral Chen," Thextil said formally, "may I present Sentinel Vax Mora of the Fringe Worlds Coalition. They've traveled quite far to speak with you." Chen inclined her head respectfully. "Welcome to New Terra, Sentinel. I wasn't aware the Fringe Worlds had decided to send a representative." The Sentinel's skin rippled with blue and gold patterns, an emotional response Chen couldn't interpret. "We have not come to join your confederation," Vax Mora said, their voice a strange harmony of tones. "We have come to warn you." The mood in their small circle chilled instantly. Zaxis straightened in his chair, suddenly looking every bit the diplomat who had led the Confederation for centuries. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," the old minister suggested. Minutes later, they gathered in a secure conference room. The Sentinel placed a small device on the table, which projected a 3-dimensional star map showing a region far beyond Confederation space. "The swarm you encountered was merely a splinter," Vax Mora explained, manipulating the projection to zoom in on a dense cluster of systems. "The main hive occupies this region, what you might call the Carina Sagittarius arm of your galaxy." Chen studied the projection intently. "How long have you known about this?" "The Fringe Worlds have been fighting them for over 1,000 of your years," the Sentinel replied. "We are not a unified government like your Confederation. We are survivors, scattered outposts, and colonies too stubborn to die." 1,000 years, Zaxis whispered. "While we enjoyed our peace, others fought our battles." Vax Mora's skin darkened. "We did not fight your battles, Minister. We fought for our own survival. But now the hive patterns are changing. Since their defeat at your Harmony Station, they have begun to mass their forces for a significant push, directly toward Confederation space." Chen's expression hardened. "How much time do we have?" 3 of your years, perhaps 4. The Sentinel manipulated the projection again, showing movement patterns across the star map. "They consume as they advance. Each world feeds their growth." "Why come to us now?" Thextil asked. "If your people have fought them for so long." "Because we are losing," Vax Mora stated without emotion. "Each cycle there are fewer of us. Our technology is scavenged, adapted. We lack the resources for sustained resistance." "But you've survived 1,000 years against them," Chen pointed out. "By sacrificing worlds, by retreating when necessary, by accepting casualties you would find unacceptable." The Sentinel's eyes all focused on Chen simultaneously. "We have studied your Earth. You do not retreat. Not ultimately." A heavy silence fell over the room. Chen exchanged glances with Zaxis and Thextil, a wordless communication born of years working together. "What exactly are you proposing?" Chen finally asked. "An alliance," Vax Mora replied. "Not with your Confederation, which knows nothing of true war, but with Earth, with the blood-marked ones who fought the swarm and won." Thextil bristled visibly. "Earth is part of the Confederation now. Any alliance will include all Confederation members," Chen interrupted firmly. We fight together or not at all. The sentinel studied her with those unsettling, independently moving eyes. The others will be a liability, they said bluntly. They're learning, Chen replied, faster than you might think. And they bring resources, technology, and numbers that Earth alone cannot match. Vax Mora was silent for a long moment, their skin cycling through a series of patterns Chen interpreted as internal debate. Very well, the sentinel finally said. But we will deal primarily with humans. Your species understands what must be done. After the meeting concluded and the sentinel departed to communicate with their leadership, Chen remained in the conference room with Zaxis and Thextil. You realize what this means, Thextil said quietly. The defense initiative was just the beginning. This will require full militarization of the Confederation. Zaxis nodded slowly. 10,000 years of peace, ended not by the first swarm attack, but by the knowledge that we must become something else to survive what's coming. Chen studied the star map, still hovering above the table. The fringe worlds have technology we haven't seen before, adaptation techniques for surviving against overwhelming odds. Combined with Confederation resources and Earth's military doctrine, we have a chance. Thextil finished. More than a chance, Chen corrected. But it means changing how the Confederation sees itself. No more viewing humans as the odd, violent species you reluctantly accepted. What saved Earth will need to become part of your cultural DNA too. Zaxis closed his ancient eyes briefly. The blood on your ships, he said softly. It will need to become our blood too. 2 days later, in a ceremony broadcast across Confederation space, Grand Minister Zaxis and Admiral Chen signed what would become known as the Blood Covenant, a formal alliance between the Galactic Confederation and the Fringe Worlds Coalition, with Earth's military command structure forming the backbone of the unified defense force. As part of the ceremony, representatives from each major Confederation species approached the newly commissioned flagship, Defiance. One by one, they placed their hands, or equivalent appendages, into shallow basins containing their species' blood. Then, in a gesture that would have been unthinkable years before, they each marked the ship's hull with a single red streak. With this blood, freely given, Zaxis intoned, his voice carrying across the vast docking bay. We pledge ourselves not just to peace, but to its defense. Not just to civilization, but to its survival. When Chen's turn came, she stepped forward with a small vial of her own blood, collected from wounds received during the Battle of Harmony. She drew a streak beside the others, human blood mingling with the various hues and consistencies of a dozen alien species. 5 years ago, you looked at our blood-marked ships and saw barbarism, Chen said, addressing the assembled dignitaries and the billions watching across the stars. Today, we mark this ship together, not as a celebration of violence, but as a promise that what we love, we will defend. That what we build, we will protect. That the light of civilization, no matter the darkness that comes, will not be extinguished. Later, as the Defiance prepared for its maiden voyage, a diplomatic mission to the nearest fringe world outpost, Chen stood with Thextil on the observation deck. You know, Thextil said thoughtfully, before humans arrived, there was a saying among the elder species, peace is the natural state of enlightened beings. Chen smiled slightly. And now they understand that peace isn't the natural state of the universe. It's something precious, created and maintained. Something worth bleeding for. He turned to face her directly. I used to pity humans for your violent history. Now I see it prepared you for a universe the rest of us weren't ready to face. Chen watched as the Defiance slowly pulled away from the station, its hull bearing the multicolored blood streaks of a united galaxy, no longer just a human tradition, but a covenant among stars. We didn't come late to the galactic community, she said quietly. We came exactly when we were needed. The ship activated its drive, vanishing into the depths of space, carrying with it the blood-sworn promise of species who had finally learned that sometimes survival demanded more than words. Sometimes it demanded everything. And they were, at last, ready to give it.